Welcome to this week's episode of the RV Small Talk podcast, where we talk about trailers, truck campers, and the people and places and adventures that go along with them. This week, I'm your host, Clint, and I don't have PJ or Lindsay, but I do have
Laura Sandberg,
who happens to be my best friend and wife, and we're going to talk about things. I'd like to direct your attention to rvsmalltalk.com. If you like this episode or you want to check out the show notes for any other episode we've ever done, head on over to rvsmalltalk.com. Also, you can join the conversation over at our Facebook group. That is RV Small Talk Community. Find us there online. We talk about most anything RV or travel related, or at least we try to. Share your photos, your stories, your questions. We love to hear from you. And every Friday, we go live at noon Central Time, where you can just basically join us in a kind of video person sort of thing. Anyways, let's dive into this week's episode. Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right, so some ground rules, Laura. You're not used to being on the microphone like this.
No.
And I've somehow goaded you into doing this, even surprised you with this at dinner this evening.
Yes, you did. But hey, we'll give it a go. I'm here and let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be super easy for me.
Oh, you think?
At least until editing, in which case you're probably going to give me lots of rules to play by, which I pretty much usually throw out the window. Just ask PJ and Lindsay.
No, I know.
So at any rate, so here's the deal. PJ and Lindsay are out for this recording. We just ran out of time. It's been super busy at the dealership. Lots of things to do, fires to put out and whatnot. But then the two of them had to head off to the TRVDA, something like that. One of those conventions that dealership people have to go to. I didn't have to go. Yes. But they had to go to do the networking and decision making and stuff like that. So good luck to you, PJ and Lindsay, over at the Texas RV Dealership Association this weekend in Bastrop, Texas. We hope that goes well. In the meantime, Laura, I thought that we would just talk. We would talk about some of the trips that we've done and the travels, how it's not what we would have thought, and yet it's what we do. So, what have you thought about our last two trips?
The last two trips.
In particular.
All right. Let's see. The last two trips were most recently, we took a 3-day weekend down to the beach at Texas Beach. And right before that was a trip to Colorado for 5 nights.
Mm-hmm.
So those both were things that we've had on the radar for a few months now, and we've all been very excited about them. And I say overall, they were successful. We had overall.
If you could only see the pained face as she says that, because she's trying to choose her words and keep it in a good light. Here's the deal. When we travel, is it fair to say we don't travel and expect rest and restoration and peace?
That is absolutely fair to say, and we keep our expectations, I think, a little bit low because of prior experiences.
Well, maybe we balance that.
Okay.
We learned a few lessons on some trips. We no longer go expecting rest and peaceful moments and calming and settle your mind. We just, that's not our thing. We would love for it to be our thing, but we know not to expect it.
Yeah,
we keep those expectations low. However, we have found lots of value. Now, and we travel with our kids, one who has just turned 6 and one who is 2 days away from being 3. And they are boisterous.
Yes.
So.
Right. No, it has been good. It has been challenging. The packing and leading up to it and the getting there, there are absolutely challenges to it, but overall, we just find so much value in trying to get these experiences, for our family, for our memories, for the bonding, and also just being outside, because it's somewhere that you and I love to be, and we kind of were just trying to get our kids to like that too.
Right.
You know, a little bit of selfishness to it. It may not be relaxing now, but hey, maybe in the future, it probably will be. So
yeah. Well, I think that we fight the attention span of our backseat. I can't just call them passengers. They really drive our lives, but
right. And I think that's also what I was saying about trying to keep expectations low. Maybe not low, but expectations appropriate, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's not, realistic to expect a 2-year-old to be able to, I don't know, do any number of things one day. So it's just trying to keep expectations appropriate for them. They're being perfectly 2 and perfectly 6.
Right.
So we have to remember that with what we're trying to do.
Well, let me give a little bit of an example of our expectations in our current season.
Right.
When we travel, of course, eating up the miles is not always easy because you don't know how it's going to go with restroom breaks or snacks or food or naps, if they're going to fall asleep, if they aren't going to fall asleep, if they're going to be fighting over things in the back seat, if they're going to drop the same toy all the way to the floor where you can't turn around and reach it. I don't know how many hundreds of times. All that's going to happen. You just don't know the mix of it.
Right.
But our number one known fact that I can think of right now, or at least to me, is the first night camping with our 2 kids is going to make us wonder why we try every single time.
Every time. Yes, every time. But, we know that now, that we know that first night is likely to be just awful. And Colorado kind of topped that out. The first night at Colorado, it was just, even the setup there, and that's another thing that we've, anyways, the getting set up, all of the travel, and then that first night, it makes sense that it all just stacks up and becomes just a perfect storm. We kind of know that in our heads now, so it helps some with the sanity of it. But still, despite that first night of Colorado, I think we both wanted to quit.
Oh, yeah.
But we couldn't because we're 900 miles away from home. What are you going to do besides, we better believe that I'm going to stay there and stay a couple more nights. I am not going to make that car ride home again. So,
and our pattern with our kids is we know that first night's going to be bad. The kids are in a new setting. They're in the trailer. They're excited. They've been cooped up. So they have unspent energy. There's a lot going in on this, emotions and maturity issues and whatnot. If we can make it through that first night, we will be battered come the next day. And yet the next day, 2 days, however long our trip is, will be so much better. We just got to make it through the getting there, travel, and that first night.
Right. So with that, we make plans around that. Of course, we don't want to go somewhere for just one night. We try to stay at least 2 nights or 3 when we can.
Right.
To at least make all of it worth it.
Right. And 2 nights. So I think that our nights tend to get progressively better.
Yes.
So one night is bad. That to me, that's not a worth it trip at this stage of our family life.
Right.
2 nights, I'll consider it if it's fairly local. 3 nights, now we're talking. That third night, the kids have really settled into. We're in this place, and that's when, even though we don't look for more rest and relaxation and peace for our family, things calm down a bit. In our family, we're removed from our daily location and stuff like that enough, and they have settled into this outdoor space that I guess the 4 of us start to be friends again.
Yes. And so then we had the beach, and I don't remember the first night of there being quite as bad as some of the others.
Are you kidding?
What was the first night? Did I just block it out of my memory?
Wow.
What happened?
Okay, well, first off,
second night was that rude neighbor that came up.
No, that was the first night.
That was the first night?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, our first night. So it's not always the kids that causes problems. The first night we were down at the beach down near Corpus Christi, Texas, we were in a campground that was walking distance to the water of the beach. So it was a campground near the beach, not on the beach. At any rate, we about, I guess, 10 something at night.
So the kids went to bed easily, and that usually is what trips us up.
Right.
So the kids were asleep. And then
because they got wore out.
we kept them up late. They got wore out. We did have family there.
Your sister and her family there. It was
We had help.
fantastic setup for us to meet up with them. But we had a neighbor, if you will, pull in late at night and pull out a battery operated, and it wasn't a drill, it wasn't a hammer drill, it was a battery operated impact gun. And he went around his trailer, I don't know how many times, to use that impact gun on his on his stability jacks, but he was using them as leveling jacks, and it was loud. And it was, and he was actually doing this about 10:30 at night. And then they had a golf cart that they unloaded, and they had to tinker with it at night to get it working. It's a gas-powered golf cart.
And at one point, the truck headlights were aimed right in your window.
His diesel,
our window.
his 3/4 ton dually, maybe 1 ton.
Because I'd already fallen asleep.
Yeah, his dually diesel. He pointed at our camper, which has soft-sided tip outs for beds, canvas.
Yeah.
And he turned and he had his high beams on right on our camper, going right through our trailer.
Yeah.
And then they fixed the gas-powered golf cart and let their kids or grandkids ride around the RV park on it. And this was probably about midnight at this point. And
I did miss all that part.
They were
golf
driving
cart.
all
I
around
slept through
our
that.
trailer and the trailer of your sister's trailer, which
yeah.
is just a canvas-sided pop-up.
Yeah.
And those kids were acting like they were playing chicken with their trailer. They would head like full speed at your sister's trailer, and then right at the last minute, like cut the wheel and veer off.
Wow, I missed part of that story.
And then the golf cart died. Hallelujah. We thought.
Oh, no.
What did they do? And here's the deal. I was dozing in and out, so I didn't actually get all of this. Shannon and George recounted a bit of this to me because it was their trailer that was in the crosshairs
Right.
of
We
the
had caught
kids
some
in the
of
golf
this.
cart. The golf cart broke, and they had to push it back to their trailer. And then now it's well after midnight. And you think, okay, they'll leave it alone till the next day. No, they worked on that thing at night, making noise, working on it, and got it running and went for it again.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah, it was bad. At any rate,
Hey, I slept through the golf cart.
well, you
part.
were exhausted.
Yeah.
And but one reason you were exhausted is after this was happening, maybe it was the second night. Our son, he's a little bit prone to crying out in his sleep, and I have a feeling he gets this from me because I was a sleepwalker and a sleep talker, and I think that he's kind of in that vein. But he was like crying out or whimpering, and you got out of bed, I don't know, 30 times.
In Colorado. Yeah.
Was that Colorado?
That was Colorado.
I'm getting it all mixed up.
You know what? The beach trip, he did actually have an awful night going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was screaming and crying and stuff.
And I couldn't tell if he was awake.
Even just going to sleep. But yeah, I totally just try to block this stuff out of my memory if I can. So now it's
Wow.
coming back to me. I mean, thank you for this reminder.
Wow, I'm sorry for the trauma. And we had nothing in our refrigerator to help except for Dr. Pepper. And he's not a psychiatrist.
I have started taking some kids' melatonin. And if I can remember, give that to them just a little bit before bed. And I think that could help. We don't do that regularly, but for the trips. But anyways.
For that
first
night syndrome.
Yeah, trying to figure out some tips to make it through that first night, because we know we need to hang in there and push through it. Survive it.
Here's another thing that we learned about taking the kids is they need activity.
Right.
They need engagement, and they need experiences in the outdoors. So they've done fishing off the bank, fishing off of a boat with their uncle. They've gone on short hikes to see waterfalls like Treasure Falls. I mean, short hike, beautiful little hike in Colorado. We do these things with them for experience and all that, but also kids need activity. Kids need that outlet, that activity, that engagement, that mind building. But at this age, 6 and almost 3, it's super foundational stuff.
Right. I think just the fact of being outdoors is so key for childhood, getting to take that walk up to the waterfall. I mean, sure, there's some risk to it. I mean, our son is a natural at, he's 2, but he's still pretty clumsy and falling.
Right.
So there is some risk to it, but I mean, that's also how they learn, by getting their feet in their balance, being, at the campsite, there were big rocks all over the place. That's just
in Colorado.
Yeah. In Colorado. Yeah. I mean, I don't 3-foot rocks, maybe even a couple of.
Oh, they're bigger.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm not going to fight that fight of telling them not to climb on the rocks and jump off. I mean,
no, and I wouldn't want
there.
you to.
Yeah. I mean, that's so there's always some risk to that, that as a mom now, cringing a little bit as I see him wobbling up there, but he loves jumping off and playing with the sister and then making up their own little games, of pretending. And so, we'll have some low key stuff like that with just letting them bebop around the campsite and playing their games, jumping on the rocks and stuff. But then, there comes a point when, okay, we need to have a little bit more of an adventure. We took some trips walking down to the creek that was, I don't know, 50 yards from our campsite.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah. And
which, by the way, was amazing to listen to at
exactly
night and to wake up to.
5 nights of listening to that babbling creek. I mean, that put me in my happy spot. So but yeah, just even though at the age they are, that stuff is super cool and is going to make some good memories, at least for the 6-year-old. I'm not sure how much my son will remember, but the 6-year-old, I mean, I remember as a kid being about that age and maybe a little bit older, and there was a fallen log that was over a small creek, and we balanced our way and walked across that. I may have fallen in it, I don't know. It's just a small creek, but that stuff was super cool. And
sure,
you don't get to do that here in your neighborhood. So it's just such a neat experience, and so it doesn't take much at that age to be able to be cool and impressive,
right?
And they were so thrilled with being able to go fishing,
right?
In Colorado, and one of the uncle that we got to see that time, Cody, he had brought a fold up boat.
Okay, so his boat is cool. It's a little boat. I don't know. I think they actually call it fold a boat or something like that.
Okay.
It's a plastic or polymer boat that has a few seams and you can fold it almost. Yeah. Porta boat. That's it. Porta boat. And it folds almost flat, and you put a little battery powered, trolling motor on it, and you can putz around these high altitude lakes and fish. And the thing's fantastic. And it's great for kids. And you don't need a boat trailer. There's a lot of things. Anyways, I digress. The thing's cool.
Right. Yeah. So just, some real neat stuff with that. But yeah, they both caught a fish or two, you and I did as well, and it was just so neat for them to be able to reel that in by themselves. And,
right.
When the 6-year-old caught her fish, we weren't even looking, and she just started reeling in and yelling at us, I got a fish. I got a fish.
Exactly.
And she did it all by herself, got it pretty much up to the bank by herself. And,
right.
Was super thrilled that it was a rainbow trout, because what's cooler than rainbow for a 6-year-old girl?
Exactly.
But yeah, just the time of our life. Colorado's special to me because my family went camping in Colorado every summer, or pretty much every summer growing up. So that is some key memories of my childhood.
Yeah.
And that's part of what motivated the trip for us. We had a few things going for it, but I wanted just something that kind of, personally, it was neat to be able to go kind of to the same area. I hadn't been to the campground that we went to, but it was kind of in the same area, and just being able to give that experience to my kids. I mean, we used a trailer this time instead of a tent like I did growing up, but I think
you camped on picnic tables, not in tents, but on picnic tables.
No, that story is from my dad. He sometimes him and his brothers would take a sleeping bag and sleep on picnic tables.
Your dad and his brothers pretty much grew up wild.
Hey, if they had a fishing pole and if there were fish in that water, they'd camp wherever they needed to.
They are that way to this day, though.
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyways, so I still maintain, I'm pretty sure you not only camped more growing up than I did, but you also camped in epic places. Whereas this last camping trip was to the beach, which is more my neck of the woods. You know, I grew up in South Texas, 30 minutes from the coast.
Kind of the only place you can camp in summer in Texas.
Because there's a breeze. And it's by water.
And water.
And we've talked about it on the podcast with Lindsay and PJ that if you're going to be in a hot location like Texas is in the summertime, to pull that off, you really need a breeze and you need access to water. Otherwise, it can be pretty miserable trying to summer camp in Texas. And that's when families have the opportunity. Yeah. Which is why we run to Colorado.
Right.
That's just why.
Exactly.
It's a long run.
Right.
Now, as we did these little excursions, these little fishing trips and all that, we didn't hold our kids to any kind of timeline. We held them to how long were they engaged. And that was 100% long enough.
Right.
And we may have gone fishing a few times, but we never held them longer than their engagement. We went on a short hike that was interesting enough that they were engaged. Plus they had their cousins there, which was, if you're traveling with kids and they can have cousins or something like someone, a friend or aunts and uncles or grandmas and grandpas, someone around, that's such a huge help.
Right. And snacks. Snacks also are a motivator.
Yes. Sometimes the cousins have different snacks.
When we took it was a quarter-mile walk up to Treasure Falls.
Sure. The easy path to Treasure Falls.
But I learned from my dad's experience when, with us girls, and he had taken Starburst, to motivate us if we needed to on that walk up to Treasure Falls. So I did the same thing.
So let me get this straight. Did he crack open the wrapper and set one down and make a little trail for you to follow?
No, that's what we did with the chipmunks growing up.
Starburst?
No, with peanuts.
Oh.
And we lured them. Oh, that's a good story. We had peanuts.
You lured them? Were you going to eat them?
No, we got them up into the... We had a truck camper that we were borrowing from my uncle.
Okay.
And we lured him.
This is a true truck camper in the back of the pickup truck.
Oh, yeah, a blue pickup truck.
Ooh.
I don't know what model, but it was blue.
It was blue.
We put peanut. The chipmunk got closer, and we put peanuts up the stairs to the truck camper, and we almost got him trapped in the truck camper. I don't know what we would have done if we got him in the truck camper.
That would have been a mistake.
But the youngest child, which so happened to be me, I think closed the door too prematurely, too excited that he was close and scared him off. So,
oh, that's providence there.
Yeah. But probably was good that I messed that up, but still.
Oh yeah. You already have enough stories that you'll never live down with your family. You don't need that one.
Yeah. It's true.
So our kids, I don't know that they're necessarily building huge memories of these trips just yet, but they are getting more comfortable making these trips, which will make things so much better. I mean, just so much better down the road. I already have an idea that it'd be neat to try a trip to Arkansas next year if I can pull it off. And I'm already talking it up with some family to see if they might come on board. I get it. Long drives with kids can be a hard thing to step into. But getting them used to it goes a long way.
Right.
If you're going to go a long way. Well, that's terrible, but I did it. Okay.
Right. No, you just get them used to it. I mean, that was the longest trip that we had done with the 2-year-olds. 6-year-olds made that trek before at a younger age. But, we have family all around Texas. So we've done some,
well, that's part of their training trips. As it is.
Right. So
we have to go see cousins 3, 4, 5, 9 hours away.
Right. So we have a few tricks up our sleeve, but for the most part, we also just get into survival mode. But yeah, just alternating with snacks and having activities to play. I'm excited because, it's getting closer to the 6-year-old being able to play some games, looking out on the billboards for, the alphabet game.
Okay.
See what letters you find, just being able to interact with some games or something like that. Don't know what kind of games we could do with a 3-year-old that wouldn't drive us crazy. And we're not all that big into sing-alongs in the car, that.
Well, let's talk about that. Ever since I had my first kid, my daughter, I've tried to sing along with her, and she has not once ever been okay with that. My daughter is a solo artist. She sings alone, and you are her audience. And my son is pretty much the same way. Our kids weren't made for traveling sing-alongs.
They let me sing Old MacDonald as long as we can alternate between them on who gets to choose which animal. But their favorite is to choose things that aren't animals and make me, try to come up with a sound for, I don't know, book or computer, rock. Okay, no.
Oh,
but yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're not the sing-along family. But that works for some people. So you figure out what works for you and just get them used to it. You'll have some wins and some things that you need to keep trying. But
yeah. So what else do you think kind of is in the positive category of what works while we're in the vehicles to go places? I think that for me, and I talked about this on our Friday Live today, it's easy to get anxiety if, as the drivers, when watching the fuel gauge, it's easy to get anxiety when you're towing a trailer, particularly if it's a longer, taller setup or something, looking at, okay, how much stress is it going to be to find a fuel station and to find a fuel station that's in a situation that I'm going to be able to safely pull in next to a pump, fill up, and pull out without having dangerous scenarios or too many people around. And we talked about this, and what I came up with in our most recent few trips is, if my gas tank is looking like it's halfway full, go ahead and start looking for a gas station. What's it going to hurt? The difference in price isn't going to be so great that it's going to be worth it to bypass a handful of understandably easier spots. If I'm halfway empty, start scanning for a doable gas station. One will come up. You will find something that is more clear than the others, more open, wider spaces between the pumps, and then just pull in and fill up. And that's an opportunity to stretch legs and all that. And I get it. I come from a background of trying to do straight hauls as much in the saddle time as possible. But I tell you what, the trip goes faster if you're okay with doing these little stretch your leg, fill up half a tank, and run to the restroom breaks.
Yeah, no, and I get that. Like you said, I also come from a background of trying to do the straight hauls and take a 5-minute break if you're not back to the car in that time.
Your dad's old school, by the way. That's some old school stuff.
There were some times that I would look over and be like, you still have half a tank. Why are you stopping? Do I have to unload the kids this time? Or are they going to be upset if I, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't the driver, and I got that we had a different element. We were pulling a trailer.
Well, if I may, also on the way up, we were actually traveling with your dad, and your dad had either our daughter with him or our son with him, depending on what time.
That's true.
And so we were in communication, and that having a grandkid in the vehicle totally changes the way he travels.
Like most parents that become grandparents, he is a changed man. So speaking of things that have changed, used to, we tried to do the long haul trips, and stop as briefly and as infrequently as possible. Another thing that's changed from is that used to, when we would go up to these camping trips in Colorado with our tent packed in the van, we had passed by this place, Fun Valley Resorts.
Oh, yes.
And it was full of RVs and
Class A
RVs.
fifth wheels.
Yeah, and putt and paddle boards.
Stocked
and
fish tanks where you're
stocked
guaranteed.
fish
Yeah.
tanks. And,
they have a big old restaurant on site.
Right.
They have a square dancing, whatever you call it, just a building for square dancing.
Right. We would drive by there, and he'd just make some sort of comment of, "That's not camping." And we'd keep driving, and just up the road another 30 minutes or hours where we would go camping, next to the real fishing.
Way more remote.
Right. Yeah. A campground that, has 15 or 20 slots, but still you have your own little section, your own little picnic table, and your places to hang your tree or places to hang your hammock. And that's where we camp. It's not off the grid camping or what do you call it, the public land, but it's in between.
It's nearly primitive camping. It's just like an improved site. Right. It might have a water spigot.
Right. It didn't have often it didn't have hookups, but you had your water pump.
A water pump, hand pump.
Right, hand pump.
Like we had in Colorado this trip.
Right,
cool.
right. Just like very similar campground. But then one of his daughters went and married, or my sister Brittany went and married a guy named Cody that grew up camping at Fun Valley every year.
Since he was 2 years old.
Since he was 2. And so now that they're married, that's where, they live up in the Panhandle, and it's real easy for them to get over to Fun Valley. So they're there once or twice a summer, for a couple of weeks, couple of weeks.
That's their summer residence almost.
But what's hilarious and also very endearing is that my dad now camps at Fun Valley in his pop-up trailer.
Which makes sense because he gets to be nearby his grandkids and his daughter, and he gets to fish with them. Yeah,
they're the sister's the only one that regularly goes camping up there, and Dad likes to still be able to have the family element when possible.
Right.
So, hey, if that's where the people are, he's not so proud that he, won't go. So he's happy to be there and happy to be around the family, and hey, he's getting to fish. That's his happy place. Right. So.
And it's easy.
He does usually hop over to the lake, and he doesn't fish the stock tanks. He's still, will hold to that. He might go accompany a grandkid there.
He will throw a hook in the water at Fun Valley just to help his grandkid.
There's a river.
You're right. He uses it as a place to rest his head, and then he'll hop in his truck and drive to one of his more preferred lakes in the Rio Grande National Forest.
Right. But yes, it's okay to change your thoughts or change your ways with time.
Yeah.
So
if you're a resort camper listening to this podcast, we have no problems with that. We get it. We totally do. We understand it.
It was really neat actually even talking with my sister, because they've been going there now for, I guess 15 years about, with their kids, they're teenagers, almost teenagers. And, even just looking around, because when we went in July, it was crowded there.
So crowded.
We visited. We didn't have our trailer there, but we visited a few times. And just getting to hear about the experiences and just watching the kids, there's just some freedom that the kids can have there. Send the kid with a walkie-talkie and their bike. Mm-hmm. They have passes that you can buy to do the paddle boats, or
they have a train running around the whole place endlessly.
Yeah, so the kids are able to get freedom in a way that modern neighborhoods, modern cities, you no longer get. Back in our parents' generation, they got to run around the town, or at least my parents did.
At least the neighborhood, and so many of us with kids in that age bracket don't feel quite that safe to do in our own neighborhoods.
Yeah, you and I got to some, but now with our kids, it's like, I'm not so sure,
Right.
Even if we're comfortable with it, we might get CPS called on us because we let our kid walk to the park, So what are we going to be able to be comfortable with? But in an environment up there, they have... Sure, send your kid with a walkie-talkie and bike, and they tell you where, you just keep in contact. So the freedom of that, I was like, that really is something neat.
And it almost becomes like a bicycle community out there. There's so many kids and parents and grandparents on bicycles up there.
Right.
And quite a few golf carts too.
Sure. But hey, they're getting time outside, And
there's always something to do.
right. And cell phone reception is horrible there. So, they're not bumping around on their phones.
Right.
So
Right. There's one place you can get Wi-Fi.
Go up to the office. Yeah.
And it's comfortable. It's pleasant enough that you can get coffee.
Right.
But the kids are going to be surrounded by activities. They're going to want to do activities. They make friends.
Right. So yeah, I think it's a great option. It just wasn't the experience that, I wanted us to be able to have for our kids. And
right.
So,
well, and I had access to the Intech trailer that the Flyer Discover, and I really wanted to be in a site that had some wilderness around it this time, that didn't have electricity or water right at the site. I did have to walk over to the pump and get water on a couple of occasions, and whatnot. And we camped without being plugged into an outlet.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was real neat for us. We've had several camping trips to varying degrees, but this probably is the longest one that we've been able to have. And, just really getting to proof of concept for a few things that we were able to do this. We like camping with family, but also, you and I are both the youngest in our families. So sometimes it's a little easier to, with the young kids, to just depend on the others, and that there's no shame in that. But to some degree, sometimes we just want to be able to do it ourselves, to make sure that we can. And, so that was
we adults
neat.
Yet? Right. I don't know. I'm the youngest kid.
Right. And even just, it's really there's a lot that's different about being the parent now. Instead of being the kid, like I said, both of us are the youngest. I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and you're the youngest of 2 with an older sister.
Right. Well, we were like I said, camping down near the beach, in the beaches that I went to growing up. So those roads that we were driving to and from and around Corpus Christi and Port Aransas and Aransas Pass, Mustang Island. I grew up going those places, not really camping, but it was just where we were.
Familiar. Yeah.
And we were driving back, towing the trailer with our kids in the back seat. And I, at one point in time, I looked at you and said, this is just so weird being on these roads, on these highways parallel to the beach. And I'm the adult in my life.
Right.
That it just kind of struck me as, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm the adult in my life.
Right.
Odd.
We've been doing this adulting thing for a little while now, but still sometimes surprising.
Right.
But, as a kid growing up camping, especially the youngest, I didn't really have to worry about anything except having fun.
Right.
My older sister obviously would have had some more responsibility looking out for me.
Right.
But now that we're parents and trying to plan this stuff and make sure everything's packed and, and even just like up in Colorado, I know y'all were talking about anxieties, like you said during the live show today. One thing I kept thinking about, going to Colorado was, bears.
And I may have caused that.
No, I'd already had a dream about my friend getting attacked by a bear. So I was dreaming about bear attacks.
And this was
this was a cartoon bear in my dream, not like a real bear, but like a cartoon.
Yogi and Boo Boo?
Yeah. Yeah.
No kidding.
Not exactly, but yeah, a cartoon like that. So like I knew it wasn't, whatever. But so at one point I was like, I just need to get a grasp on this some, because what am I going to do, now that my little kids are going to be with me, how do I handle this? And so I actually...
And you never really paid attention on using a bear box to store your food and stuff like that.
No, I didn't have to worry about that. I knew that there were bears like when we were there as a kid, but that responsibility wasn't on me. I just had to stay close to the others. That was my responsibility. And I think I had a whistle to wear around my neck. Probably less for the bears, but if I got lost, I think I was wearing a whistle.
Okay.
So anyways, I was having this little bit of anxiety or just fear. But I did take to Google, and for once, Google actually helped calm this instead of make it worse. So often Google, oh no, I must be dying,
Unlike going to WebMD where every rabbit trail ends in demise.
Right. So for once, Google helped. I looked up, how many bear fatalities have there been in Colorado? And it was like 4 in the last 30 years or something like that. It's like, I can live with that risk. That's just statistically is low. I didn't deep dive to see how many injuries or whatever, close encounters, but
that was enough.
How many fatalities? 4 in the whole state over like 30 years?
I bet they lose more people to falling through thin ice on some of those lakes each year. I bet.
Yeah. So anyways, I was able to live with that, and I was like, okay, so I'll be on the lookout, but not too big of a deal. So.
All right. Yeah. And I would say for you in particular, all the prep leading up to getting in the vehicle and going is where the bulk of your anxiety lies. I think once we get in the car, of course, the trip can be hard and the first night can be hard. We talked about this.
Right.
But I think though that week before we put the key in the ignition and go is the hardest for you.
Yeah, I would say probably so. I think that we're getting better with that with time. We have a packing list now that at first we, a couple of years ago, we were just trying to wing it a bit more, but we have finally kind of getting a good draft for a packing list, and we've had some talks on how we can share the responsibility in that, and I think that's going pretty well. Basically it's just a packing list that we've kind of organized kind of for what works for us, and some check boxes we printed off, and then it's just a good visual tool. I'll come through and check some things off, you'll come through and check some things off, and that way you're not trying to ask me how you can help, and I'm not trying to figure out how to communicate without barking orders, what you can do. We've just already kind of hashed it out. So that checklist is helping. And some of the organizational tubs that we have, those still need some tweaking, but I think we have a better system going. It still is some work, juggling that with responsibilities of full-time work and, kids and their needs.
Yeah.
And we had daycare change, a few weeks before, and that's always a transition and some stress and anxiety with that. So just life.
Sure.
But yeah, absolutely. That's the hard part. But, I just want to be prepared, the balance of not packing the whole house, but packing enough. We are going to be out to some degree in the wilderness and not quite sure where the nearest hospital is. And that stuff doesn't bog me down too much, but
so I keep on kicking around this Arkansas.
Yeah.
Do you have any other places that you kind of have in mind?
And that's the hard part. And we actually had a good conversation on this right before Colorado. Maybe not the right time for the conversation, but just there's so many different kinds of camping. Even we have the trailer. I grew up going and just kind of setting up at a campground, fishing, exploring, a little bit of sightseeing, but really, once kids get a little bit older, we will be able to sit in a hammock and relax there and just enjoy nature, not bumping around doing all the things. But then I'm, also there's a lot that I want to see, even in Colorado, places that I haven't seen, just various places that we really need to just hop around to and see.
Places come to mind. I'd love to see the Great Sand Dunes. I want to
Silverton train.
I want to do Silverton and Durango train with the kids. So that's super expensive. I want to go back to Mesa Verde.
Yeah. We did that.
There are a lot of things that maybe I went when I was younger that I want to do with them, have that experience with my kids. But you're right. There's some other things. I'd love to do Pikes Peak with them.
Right. And I haven't ever been to Garden of the Gods, and I see pictures of that. And it's like, even just those things that I love going back to the places that I have been before and sharing that with them, with you, Mesa Verde, we've both been to, but we've never done it before. Yeah. So I love the idea of repeating and doing some of the things, going to similar campgrounds and like establishing that memory. But then is this whole other side of, but wait, let's go do something new. And there's just never enough time. Yeah. So,
which is totally my thought behind saying, let's try Arkansas.
Right. Yeah.
Or someplace like that next year.
I've hardly ever been east of Texas. I've
Yeah.
been to Missouri and that's it. So,
Yeah. And then in Texas, I want to do Big Bend.
right.
I want to do Balmorhea, the
Mhm.
pools of Balmorhea. So the Davis Mountains.
Yeah.
I'd love to
right.
camp as close as I can to the McDonald Observatory
Mhm.
because I want my kids to be just in shock at a cloudless sky full of stars. How awe-inspiring that is.
Right.
And I want my kids to see that, and I want to see their faces.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I think a beach trip for me every year going forward would be good for my soul.
Yeah, and we've spent a lot of time talking about Colorado and not much about the beach, but one thing we kept just going on about while we were at the beach was, of course, that actually we were able to get some relaxing in there at the beach.
Yeah, you and I split off. First off, we had cousins and aunts and uncles.
That's a very good point.
That was key. But in that safe situation, we grabbed a couple boogie boards and went out into the surf and tried to not drown a few times. It's pretty cool.
And I got to spend some time under the canopy. I'm just sitting and watching the kids. The 2-year-old, they both spent time playing in the sand and playing in the water, but the 2-year-old gravitated to, playing in the sand, with the buckets and
I got
whatnot.
to go out with our brother-in-law and nieces and nephew out to do several hours of trying to learn how to do windsurfing.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is a neat experience to have under,
right. Yeah.
My catalog. That's cool.
Right. Check something off the list that you didn't even quite know you wanted to do. Besides, you're always up for doing something kind of
something
new and adventurous.
Yeah.
Right. So, so there were several times there we just got to, that I got to just sit and kind of just have a few peaceful moments. And it may have just been moments, but hey, with this crazy life we have, a few peaceful moments actually goes a long ways. So we did get more rest and relaxation, or some
after that first night of shenanigans from our RV park neighbor.
Right. So so that was neat. But yeah, I really feel good about the trips that we've done. And, so we talk, about, that obviously that first night being hard, but why do we keep doing this?
That's a good question. Because as we said, rest and relaxation is not in the cards for us
right now.
And yet we keep on making plans to go.
Right.
And
do we just hate ourselves?
No, I don't think we do. I think that as the kids get older, as they move out and all that, we will be definitely looking for, I want a good book. I want shade. I want a breeze, the quiet times. I'm looking forward to that. But when we get to these places and the kids start to engage with each other without the environment of the house or the electronics of the TV or what have you, when they start to engage with the environment out there or with each other differently, and they play differently and they play better, they come up with different games.
Yeah, that's true.
Watching that happen is huge. And I didn't have that much of these like camping location experiences at the age that they're at. Now, my parents took me to playgrounds and parks and zoos, and my grandparents had a ranch. It's not that I wasn't outside,
right?
But I wasn't in many national and state parks for multiple days and overnight at their age.
Right.
So that's cool. And then what we saw with them, just like the beach is a cool place because kids figure out what they want to do and they lose time. They go into that flow state mentally. And we have Goober Boy out there just building things and digging and crashing through things that he doesn't have that much use for the water. But man, he's having a blast. And then our daughter, she's just prancing all over the place, just in and out of the waves and finding shells and just, I don't know, delightful.
Yeah.
That is so cool to be a parent and to watch. And I love that we're going to get more trips to see how they interact and learn and explore going forward.
Right. Yeah. I think, sometimes it's passed through my mind of, maybe because we started we've gone on a few trips, but, we started trying to camp a little more frequently when our son was, 18 months.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was harder than just the first day. But, I think there's value in trying to do it at the young age, because if you wait until it's easier, it probably isn't going to be easier because you haven't gotten some experience under your belt. It's going to be you're going to be learning all the same lessons we're trying to now with the packing list and organization. You're still going to have your challenges. So it's never going to be easy. The kids might be a little bit easier, but about that time is when they may be a little more attached to their friends or their devices. And, so I think it's neat to be able to get them started now with the hopes that it's going to create some good strongholds.
Right. And I feel like internally they do, whether they have great memories because they're 2-year-old,
right,
whether they have real great memories or not, something internally kind of starts to get an understanding of what it's like to be out there on these outings.
Right.
And if you start with a 12-year-old, then you kind of have to reason with them if you can.
Right. Well, they start having their own opinions.
Right. You start trying to reason with them on why this is valuable, and because it hasn't been really fully set in yet.
Right.
And maybe we'll benefit from having, these outings under our belt with our kids. Right. And it's already kind of in their system. Right.
And we'll learn, their sort of styles and ways of what they want to do. Some of their cousins, really like to go do the more adventurous thing, or, some of their cousins want to, quote, real camp, like in a tent or not even a tent, they start getting more opinions.
Yeah.
But you can adapt for that as, if you can show them that there's different styles and different things to do, you can balance out the activities. But you just have to be out there doing it. So I think that's why, one of the reasons why we continue to do it even when it's not easy. You figure it out.
Yeah.
It's where we want to be. Like I said, it's being outdoors, is really enjoyable to me, or at least when it's 60 to 85, so, I do have some limitations on it now as an adult, but, it really is just what rejuvenates me. So
sure. Anyways. Cool. Well, I think we've been recording this for a while.
Well, you're going to have to cut a lot of stuff.
Well, okay. So 15-minute episode out of an hour of recording.
So, yeah. No, that's been fun. I think that it's a great thing that we're doing. Empowering through it. And let's keep doing it.
Sure, let's make some more plans.
Let's go to Arkansas.
Yeah. And maybe we'll camp a few more times in the fall. I actually kind of like using the trailer as an opportunity whenever we go see family for holidays and stuff like that. Right. It works well.
That's true. We have done some of that as well.
It works.
Yeah, it is. Very cool.
Cool. Thanks for joining me. For
welcome.
Filling in.
You're
jumping on the mic.
No problem.
Well, everybody, once again, thank you for listening to this episode of the RV Small Talk podcast. Hopefully next week we'll have the full team back with PJ and Lindsay jumping back in, and we'll have some fun and some laughs and whatnot. Don't forget to check out rvsmalltalk.com if you want to see show notes for this episode, or if you want to check out previous episodes. This is episode 100, so we have made it to the centennial mark for the RV Small Talk podcast. So, wow, what about that? Also, do check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation there. That's the RV Small Talk community group on Facebook. And from all of us to you, until our next episode comes out, be well, be safe, and we will see you next time.